So it's no secret the PlayStation 3 is one of the best consoles ever. But did you know that this console is also home to some very special games? Games that went out of their way to bring new experiences to console gamers. These experiences are commonplace in modern gaming today, sure, with free-to-play and live service titles popping up every other week. And while many are not successful, it can't be denied that some of the biggest games today are these free-to-play titles. But nearly 2 decades ago, yes, it is getting that old, the PlayStation 3 was there with exclusives that dared to blaze a path forward into new territory. Those games? None other than Mag, LittleBigPlanet, and PlayStation Home. These games share some similarities to these big free-to-play games we're seeing take over the zeitgeist today. These games are unfortunately no longer active in their online capabilities today, at least not online through any legitimate sense. But in their short time, they left a lasting mark in the PlayStation ecosystem and gaming as a whole. So let's take a look back in history and how these PlayStation 3 exclusives were ahead of their time. Let's start off the conversation with Mag, the massive action game. This was a very ambitious online shooter, and its big calling card was delivering 256-player online battles to a console. Developed by Zipper Interactive, the same developers behind the SOCOM series, this title was coming out to some decent buzz and was my first real exposure to an online-only game, meaning there was no single-player campaign, internet connection required, it would see regular patches to address player concerns, and was even updated to receive different game modes. This really was the early days of a live service title. And Mag really was a whole new experience to console gamers. Sure, we saw bigger multiplayer modes in games before. Notably, Resistance 2 came out with a multiplayer mode that allowed up to 64-player matches, which was huge for its time. But most online games were looking at 12 players per game, 6v6. But Mag wasn't just offering a huge player count on its game modes. It also approached team-based shooting in a whole different kind of way. While other games have you drop in the map and run around shooting each other like a bunch of wild animals, Mag had to take a more tactical approach to keep its huge player count maps manageable, pushing for teamwork and communication like no other. The game was broken into factions, otherwise known as PMCs. When first booting into the game, you would choose your faction, then jump into a game mode. Here's where Mag went different from other contemporary online shooters. Let's say you're jumping into the Domination game mode, which was one of those game modes that had the full 256 players in the one map. Players were divided into 8-player squads. There would be 4 of these squads, and 4 of those squads would then form a platoon. And 4 platoons formed a company. So each side had their 128-player company dropped over the map. Players that rose through the ranks by completing objectives and getting kill streaks would be able to become a squad leader or a platoon leader. These leaders would have additional commands, like calling in airstrikes or care packages. Because of this squad-style gameplay, Mag did rarely ever feel like 128 people going up against another 128 people. That would be madness, I guess. Kind of cool, but it would be madness nonetheless. Instead, it did mostly play like a smaller base team shooter, with those squads of 8 going up against another opposing squad. The gameplay and incentive to work together and to complete objectives rather than running around the map shooting at everything, Call of Duty style, I think this is what helped make the game stand apart. Today we got our big open online shooters like Call of Duty Warzone and PUBG that are all the rage, mostly for their team-based last squad standing type gameplay mode. Mag never introduced anything like that, but it was the first time we saw big player counts on a single map on a console, and also was one of the few multiplayer-only games. Mag also received a Guinness Book of World Records award for most players in a console FPS, and its overarching story takes place in the year 2025, which in my study for this video, I found quite funny. It is unfortunate that Mag didn't stick around for long, having its server shut down after only 4 years of operating. If this game was allowed to continue and evolve, it could have very well been the next big thing, well before the likes of PUBG and others took the scene. Now, another concept in the gaming space that is commonplace now would be user-generated content. That's games allowing gamers to create their own levels or game modes within the game itself. Then they go on and share those designs to players online. This concept has been around for a while, sure, but if you ask me, it really became mainstream with the arrival of one specific PlayStation 3 exclusive, LittleBigPlanet. This little 2D platform was a hit on PlayStation 3 and was the game that really propelled the whole user-generated content on console. With this charming game, you could create your own 2D levels to traverse through, and creation tools were made accessible with easy-to-follow instructions and controls. The tagline for LittleBigPlanet was Play, Create, Share. This was a huge moniker for the series, and we even saw it with the kart racer Mod Nation Racer. That game allowed gamers to create and share their own kart racing tracks. I have to say, I loved this era of Sony, and God do I miss it. And LittleBigPlanet would take this level creation to the next, level in its sequel, LittleBigPlanet 2, with players now able to create new game modes, racing, shooting. The gates really opened up with this one. Players could create cinematics, they had button control systems, and they introduced sackbots, little CPU characters that could interact with the player in the level. Players could create whatever they could imagine, then share it online for other LittleBigPlanet players to enjoy. This series pushed an amazing sense of community, and even after playing the single-player story, there was a limitless amount of fun to be had with these user-generated game modes online. LittleBigPlanet also saw the inception of paid cosmetics, with tons, and I mean tons, of Sackboy skins to buy. Thankfully, the heart of the game, being its level creation and online capabilities, they never felt roadblocked by some paywall. These additional cosmetics were just for fun and more of a nice to have. Also, all content was transferable between the LittleBigPlanet series, meaning any costumes you purchased from LittleBigPlanet 1 would seamlessly transfer over to LittleBigPlanet 2 and future titles in the series. It's safe to say the LittleBigPlanet series was a huge milestone in PlayStation history, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the developers Media Molecule and how they took this whole concept to the stratosphere with their game called Dreams. Unfortunately for Dreams, it seems this game never found more than a niche audience, but it was the pinnacle of play, create, and share. Closing out with LittleBigPlanet, it oozed charisma and charm, capturing many gamers during the PS3 era, and it's a damn shame that the LittleBigPlanet servers have been shut down, so the whole level creation portion of these great titles is now lost. While gamers today are enjoying user-created content in games like Roblox and even Fortnite, for many of us gamers, this just reminds us of another title on the PlayStation 3 that was ahead of its time. To close off this discussion is one of PlayStation's most debated projects that garnered somewhat of a cult following, and that is PlayStation Home. This game is very reminiscent of events we see take place in spaces on Fortnite. You know, those social hubs where people get together in digital space for premieres, events, and to just hang out? Well, PlayStation Home was a huge social experiment for Sony, and it was an incredible one to say the least. For me, the PlayStation 3 was my first time experiencing an online platform with the PlayStation Network, and PlayStation Home was the absolute coolest thing to me. Walking around the open spaces and emoting to people, messaging, checking out game trailers, demos, it was just a wild concept, and I absolutely loved it. You know, other kids, they went on their computers and had Club Penguin, but us PlayStation gamers, we had PlayStation Home. This was also a totally free platform experience for anyone who owned a PlayStation 3. Quite literally, this was my first free-to-play game. We just had to log in, create our avatar, and we were transported into a digital space with our fellow PlayStation gamers. You were also given an apartment that you could customize and personalize. Granted, majority of these items you would want to put in your digital apartment were not free, and this is where I had my other first experiences with microtransactions. For better or for worse, you know, it's just another thing that was ahead of its time. The more I think of the PlayStation 3 generation, it definitely gave you that sense of allegiance with the console, offering these special games and experiences that were gated behind the box. That being said, I am happy we are in a more enlightened and accessible environment with cross-platform and experiences not locked to one box. But this is that one cherry on top that was added to what made the PlayStation 3 a truly memorable console. So there we have 3 games exclusive to the PlayStation 3 that tried something new, something different. And yeah, ultimately these games did not stand the test of time, as all online versions have been taken down and can only be experienced through separate online avenues. But just taking one look at the landscape of modern gaming, especially with those younger gamers, I can see how the PlayStation 3 was very ahead of its time. But what are your memories with these games? Do you agree these were ahead of their time? Let's talk about it down in the comments. I want to thank you all for taking your time to watch the video. I hope you enjoyed the discussion piece. If you're interested in more, check out my PlayStation 4 Pro versus PlayStation 5 Pro video. Or how about a ranking of 5 PlayStation 4 games remastered for PlayStation 5. I hope you all have a great day, and as always, happy gaming.